Hello everybody, my name is Swaggy, and with the new deck sets coming out at the end of January, many of you may be wondering what to buy or maybe pre-order, or maybe you're just here because you've already done that and you want to validate your purchase. I completely get that, I understand that completely. If so, I'm here to help you, if you're a new player, kind of figure out what you could get to slowly build into either a competitive strategy or to start a really nice collection with these deck sets. Or if you're like kind of a regular player already, I'm hoping that this video can help you find out what's right for you, like which deck set you should buy. I'm also going to be going over a couple of the tips and tricks that I kind of understand playing these decks a little bit. These are tips that might be really obvious to more seasoned players, but might not be if you are either newer to the game or newer to the decks themselves. I also want to talk about how these decks could be further upgraded, because obviously buying decks, from the store, they're not going to be at their full potential. No company is going to sell full built decks right out of the box. So just in case you want to bring these decks up to the next level, you want to take these decks out competitively or anything, then I hope that this guide can also help you with what to purchase from that position. I'm not going to be going over every card in these deck lists in super big detail, so if you want to read each and every card, look up the deck sets online. You can find them on the wiki page, and just take a read through the cards if you're super lost by what I'm saying, but I will not be going over every card in specific detail, okay? First things first, I made these slides, but Swaggy is kind of blocking out some of the words. Don't worry about that. I will post kind of like a PDF of these slides in the description as well, just so you can read along if you have to, after the video or whatever. But for the most part, I will verbally explain everything anyways. To be blunt from the get-go, if you could only buy one of these products to start building your Vanguard collection or deck, if you're a newer player, I would highly recommend the Odium one over the Amorta one, and only get the Amorta one if you are a really seasoned player already, you have a lot of the pieces necessary to build the deck, or you are willing to shell out a lot of money. The main reason for this is that Liael Odium is so much easier to upgrade. It is so much cheaper to upgrade, and the deck itself is a lot of really strong generic pieces that you can use to build up your collection and build up new decks. So that makes it like a lot more economical of a purchase. Like you can get more decks out of it, you can get a stronger strategy out of it for a lower price. I also think it's the easier deck to play and the easier deck to build. Liael Amorta, or the Keter Liael, is just a little more difficult to pilot and build. Not necessarily super difficult, but just a little more challenging. And the Amorta one, the upgrades are pretty expensive, and out of the box, it's pretty bad. And you also don't get as many good generic pieces, and as a matter of fact, the whole deck itself is harder to play / build, and a lot of the deck cards are pretty much only usable in Liael Amorta. That's not to say it's a completely useless product, I'll get into that later on, but for the most part, you're going to want to lean towards Odium if you're kind of a newer player and you just want to pick one of the two to get started playing Vanguard. So if you are unfamiliar, Liael Odium is a deck that aims to win the game quickly using its once per game Divine Skill. The Divine Skill lets you get an extra turn in a row to beat your opponent up before they can kind of recuperate and to deny them defensive triggers. The deck innately has a pretty robust draw engine and ways to dig into your pieces. There are lots of ways to search out your cards, a lot of ways to draw cards. And specifically, you're going to want to find the Grade 3 ordered called Distorted Bane, which is how you're going to gain a lot of power and draw cards. The really nice part about the Odium list is that the deck set lists and a lot of the stronger lists, I'll show you an example later, are going to use a lot of the same pieces. Like, this deck set is really good. Not just in-engine cards are good in both stronger lists and this deck set, but even the generics they give you are really strong and used even in like competitive lists to this day. So that's a really big draw for this deck set. I know the image is really crusty, don't worry, you can recognize the shapes and colors after a bit, but yeah, that's why I'm not really talking about the deck set pieces. You can see it comes with, your Persona Ride, Anachronous Dragon, and this Instant Asunder Colossus, this Grade 2 here. These two cards are really good because they convert from your gauge zone into the board, making you have really efficient ways to attack. This Colossus here is in-engine way for Odium to draw a card. This can find you Distorted Banes that go to damage zone. It's very useful, and this is of course Distorted Bane itself. In case you're unfamiliar, these characters here, this girl Hikari, and later on the other older girl Erika, they are perfect guards basically. They are a type of perfect guard that is a lot more versatile than a normal one, and most decks will run one or the other. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it now, but just know that it's very useful. So those are some of the reprints in the Odium deck list. And there are also some generics I haven't talked about which are super strong. And this list is actually incredibly playable out of the box. There is not a lot you really have to do to make this a competitive Liael Odium list. And some people might slander Liael Odium, say it's a fraud deck. It really isn't. Like, it has numbered tops. It's a very consistently performing deck. Even if the way it wins, some people find it a little cheesy, a little unfair. That's not to say that it takes like no skill or whatever. The deck is good. You don't just get wins because you're lucky, okay? So don't feel bad about picking this deck up in case that's what you feel about Liael Odium. Let me talk a bit more in detail about the generics that come with this deck, because I think it is important to lay them out, because you may use them to build up other decks with these in your collection. Also because it's a little harder to immediately understand what these are used for. But Avarice Rester is really obvious, right? Avarice Rester lets you play an order basically from your deck. And this allows you to find Distorted Banes really easy to get the fastest Divine Skill you can, which comes online on turn 4. Even to this day, even though it's released in DCBT02, it is used in Odium, and not just Odium. It's also used in Heart Luru, who's in the bottom right, who is a current top deck. And with the way the Phantom cards are used right now, as far as we know from the anime as of recording, we may see that this card is found in the Dark States Gabrielius deck. So keep your eye out for that, maybe. So this is probably something reasonable to pick up. Next up, Gloomy Tune's Demonic Lady Florus. Basically, when you discard her, she goes to the soul, and you discard her during right phase, right? So this turns your right phase discard into a resource into your soul. And soul in Liael Odium can be converted to a ton of draw, making this one of the stronger cards you could use in this slot as a way to discard for ride cost. But that doesn't make her the best one. There are better cards out there in the Dark States that you can use instead of her. We'll get into some of those later on. But that's not to say she's completely useless, because in decks like the newly released Alcazal in set 12, Beryl Magnus, and sometimes the Strike deck set Hari, this is where she will really shine. Alcazal is the new deck that will release in set 12. She's right down here. If you're an EM player, if you're a JP player, it's already out. And speaking of set 12, it's also got toy support, so Heart Luru is stronger as well. So this card and the Avarice Rester, they alone are very strong pull factors for the deck set. It's very good to build a Dark States collection with just those two cards, because they build up other things. They're some of the more expensive pieces in the other decks. Next up is Twincast. Twincast is a Regalis piece, so you can only use one of them in your deck, and one of them per game basically. And it's going to give you a lot more guard value over the course of 2 attacks. And it's really strong both in your early game and your late game. And if you've got nothing else you want to discard, this is also a really good card to discard, because even if you discard it, you still can get the from drop zone shield. Twincast is possibly the strongest non-overtrigger card in this game. Like, Twincast is run in like half of the deck list in Vanguard, and the other half go to Fire Brigade list, which is another card that Odium can also run. But this is completely fine too. This is a very strong Regalis piece, especially in Odium, because Odium always wants to play her Distorted Banes every turn. So having a normal order Regalis piece just doesn't work very well. Thus, Twincast is really worth the slot. Next up, now that I've gone over kind of the general parts of the deck and whatnot, these are going to be some of the cards that you're going to want to pick up to kind of upgrade your deck or to modify your deck. I imagine you mostly understand how to play the deck and whatnot, and if you want to get some improvements for the deck, these are where you want to start. Take It Down Dragon is released in DCBT 10, and it is Liael's basically newest specific support piece. It's a consistent way that you can find your sort of Banes and the numerous grade 3s that Odium plays, especially for the fact that you can find like Persona Rights, you can find Anachronous Dragons. It's very useful. It's probably the best use of energy we have right now in Odium. It used to be the Energy Cycler, but you don't have to get that anymore, thankfully, because this card is going to be eating up a lot of your energy and also will convert to a countercharge. This gives you a lot of resource efficiency, helps you get your Distorted Banes back. It's a very powerful card. If you had to pick up like one card only from the cards I'm about to list off, he's probably the best one. Next up is Something Marie. This is a double rare released in DCBT 11. Sorry that I don't have the name offhand, but basically she's treated as a grade 3 in your deck, but she's not only a 15k beater, late game she'll become a 20k beater, and she's a 10,000 point shield. It's another target to be searched with Tick Down. It's also good on the board and on your shield, on your guard circle later, so she's quite good. Some decks now run a couple of her, not at like 4. She's decent. I would recommend picking her up, especially because at a double rare level she's also kind of affordable. Finally on this slide we have Opener of the Heart Philia. Philia basically is going to convert from board to draw, making you find stuff like Distorted Bane, and when you play Distorted Bane in turn, you can actually draw again because you've played an order, even if your opponent has a ton of rear guards. The only issue is that she is a PR, so she might be a little bit trickier to find. A lot of current Odium lists don't even run her, but you can, and she is strong nonetheless. Speaking of 5 Regalis from just now, this is 5 Regalis. 5 Regalis basically helps you build your board up. It's also good to be discarded. It might also be the best card in Standard. Again, it and Twin Cast sort of fight for that slot, honestly. And this is fine. It's also not considered playing a normal order, so it works with Distorted Bane. And if you really feel like you're missing on board a lot, I would recommend this over Twincast. It is also getting reprinted in the ZBT12 if you're an EN player, and if you're a JP player, it's already been reprinted, so go ahead, pick it up, okay? It's still a little bit on the pricey end, but not the end of the world if you have some, disposable income. Next up, this is what we call the, some people call it the Shield Cycler, some people call it the Pride Cycler because of the rainbow, and also because you need to have a Vanguard Persona ride, so, you get the pun. The Shield Cycler will give you shield when you discard it for ride, and when you play it onto the board as well. So this makes it both good on board and for discarding for ride. This is probably the card you play over Gloomy Tunes in Odium because you don't really need the soul that Gloomy Tunes supplies all the time, but you do want to have the extra shield. Like, it comes up more often than you think. And finally, the Overtrigger. While the Darkseid's Overtrigger is fine in Odium, I think the best one is Valnod. Valnod is incredibly aggressive. It is the most lethal choice that you can have for Odium, basically. Giving you, since you are triple driving, you're likely to check something like a crit as well. So if you go like crit, blank, red OT, you can make a 2 attack, 100 million attack twice, as opposed to the Darkseid's OT, which will just get PG'd anyways, usually. And this is one of the strongest cards in Standard. It's super unfair to pull it, and it's really good in Odium. It's probably one of the reasons for Odium's high topping rate as well. Like, this card is crazy. This is what a fully upgraded deck list could look like. I'm pretty sure Swaggy's body doesn't block the deck code. So you can look this up right now. This is one of the topping lists recently. I believe it was from Sapporo. So I'm not like pulling it out of my ass when I say that a lot of the deck set cards are going to be used here. As you can see, basically every card in the deck set gets used. Even the Regalis piece, the Distorted Banes get used. This is Elementaria. As you can see, Red OT is really good. You'll have to get effect triggers as well to get this super competitive. If you don't want to be super competitive, you don't want to spend the money on the effect triggers, you don't have to. They get reprinted in DCBT 13, but at the same time, if you really don't want to spend the money yet, you don't have to. But it'll come in handy. 5k shield matters a lot. And yeah, you can see, again, a lot of the stronger cards in the list. They are in the deck set already, so you're getting a really good starting point. Then you just have to pick up a couple cards here, these 3, I guess, and Takedown Dragon. Takedown is probably the most important here. If you can't build this completely, this can still be Florist for a bit. This has you can play 2 more Anachronis here. Not Anachronis, Instant Asunder Colossi. And this is the Ace unit. Just look up Ace unit. Basically, they are generic grade 2s that you can Energy Blast 3. And basically, they are big attackers and they're good on board. So, recommend picking them up, especially if you're going into Dark States as a whole, because these are very generically good in all of Dark States decks. There's probably not, there's like a handful maybe that don't want to use him. Other than that, you can see that how naturally the Odium deck set builds into this. And now for a couple of these smaller tips when you come to play Odium. If you are quite familiar with the deck already, you're probably going to be, you don't have to, pay attention too much, but these are small optimizations that could help you if you are newer. When you have Avarice Rester versus Distorted Bane, you should play Avarice Rester to discard Distorted Bane and then play another Distorted Bane from your deck. This puts another Distorted Bane into rotation that you can put into the gauge via something like Anachronis Dragon or the Instant Asunder Colossus. So this creates a lot more power and ramps towards your Divine Skill a lot faster. A lot of players might just by default just autopilot play the Distorted Bane. You don't have to do that. You can Avarice Rester and basically mill extra Distorted Bane. It's super useful and gets you a ton more resource and gets you it means you don't have to discard real cards. You can discard a card you're going to play anyways that turn, basically. Think of it as playing 2 orders in 1 turn. It's very strong. In this current deck set, you'll be on both Twincast and the Elementaria. These are both powerful Blitz orders. Elementaria is basically another perfect guard. But remember that you can only play 1 Blitz order a turn. So if you have both Elementaria and Twincast in your hand, you cannot activate both. So just try and space them out. You can't activate both in the same turn. You can, however, use Twincast's effect in the drop zone and Elementaria at the same time to bolster your guarding, since the Twincast auto does not count towards your order activation. Finally, be very conscious when you soul charge, especially with the list provided, like this list, and even this list, honestly, both, even this list as well. Be very conscious when you are soul charging out with the Colossuses, when you're soul charging with Distorted Bane. It can be very tempting to just spam the soul charge, but one way Odium tends to lose is just running out of cards in the deck. So be super conscious when you don't have to do it. Soul Charging is great if you're looking for stuff like Distorted Bane, because it going to Soul can be Soul Blasted and it can get into play later, or to look for draw cards to Distorted Bane, or to get the P-Ride. But you just have to be super conscious about it and make sure you're not just drawing your way into a deck out scenario, because Odium tends to be in that scenario a lot. Sometimes the Divine Skill doesn't finish the game, and then you're stuck in a small little grind game, and normally you have a ton of cards you can guard with. It's just your opponent has more cards in the deck than you do, because you're triple driving, then twin driving, and soul charging and drawing, so you'll run out of cards in your deck a lot faster than you may think. Next, let's talk about Liael Amorta. So Liael Amorta isn't much of a deck. If you are a seasoned player, you may already know this, but if you're not, Liael Amorta is the first Liael and has since gotten a new form called Liael Draconis, which is a viable deck, but requires way more upgrading, including a new Vanguard. It kind of plays similarly to Odium in that it has a once per game Divine Skill that threatens fast lethals. You can make about the same amount of attacks, you can make 6 attacks, and it has 4 drive tracks spread out between their Vanguard, a specific rear guard, then the Vanguard again, but it really needs the upgrades that I'm going to talk about later. It's really poor to play outside of the box. This is the list, and it's not very good. In Liael Odium, you have a lot of cards that on turn 2 can be played fast. Anachronous Dragon, Instant Asunder Colossus. These are all cards that are very useful to play early game. Whereas in Liael Amorta, a lot of your cards basically don't have text until you are Liael Amorta, basically until you're grade 3. All your grade 2s basically don't work. This grade 1 only gains shield and power if you are Liael Amorta, and even then isn't a very good card. This card only works if your Vanguard is Liael Amorta, basically, and so does this. What this means is that you're going to be fighting with a bunch of vanillas for early game, while Liael Odium is really fast and can make boards really easy and get a lot more dynamic of an early game, alongside the fact that she has a bunch of cards that say draw 1, for example. The Colossus can draw 1, both Colossuses can draw 1, whereas in Liael Amorta, none of the cards here really do anything for card advantage early game, meaning if you break on pieces early, you're just gonna break on pieces for like the whole game. It sucks. It's not very good. Even out of the box, I mean, it's not too far off in terms of like lethality, right? Again, you trade off 5 drive checks and 6 attacks for Odium, 4 drive checks, but they're spread out, and 6 attacks as well. Both of which are quite high power, but that's all I can really say about it. Maybe you could argue that this Liael Amorta deck is a lot more defensive, because Liael Amorta has the ability to become a perfect guard basically by using cards in the bind zone as a cost. But in Liael Amorta exactly, it's really hard to get like 2 bound early on. Once you get to your draw skills later on, even once you hit Liael Amorta, the only way to kind of draw a card, like hard draw a card to maybe draw into a trigger or like a shield card, is Idaras. Idaras is the card that right here, but he's a bit unreliable. A lot of decks don't even run him right now. Again, he doesn't work until you're grade 3. And because of that, you kind of want to keep him in your hand, because if he gets eaten up early, you don't really have a good unit to play on the side. So Amorta, unlike the Odium list, just can't do a whole lot. The Regalis piece here that they give you, while Twin Cast works on like turn 2, turn 3, even like later on in the game, Gratias Gradel, which is this Regalis piece, is kind of a weird reprint. It gives you a Persona Ride, which is useful because sometimes Liael Amorta will become a perfect guard, so you might lose out on a P-Ride, but at the same time, it's not very versatile. It only comes online turn 4, it's very slow, and it isn't a very valuable Regalis piece either. Like, not a lot of decks are going to run it, so you're not really going to have a lot you can build into beyond just having a Liael deck by the end of this deck set. Basically, just want to reiterate that again. You don't have an easy draw engine, you don't have a lot of good early game units, a lot of the resource use is really inefficient. It needs to Soul Blast a lot, like you should Soul Blast in Liael Amorta a lot, but having Soul is dependent on seeing Sequence Wizard. The deck doesn't even have a way that you can use your energy mechanic. You can only Energy Blast 7 to draw 1, which is really weird. And the Regalis piece is just very bad. So, if you only want a competitive experience and you can only afford one of the deck sets plus some upgrades, you should stay away from Liael Amorta. It sucks to say, but you probably can't build Liael Amorta for cheap, efficiently, and get it competitive as easy as you can Liael Odium. And even then, Odium is about, if you look at just the topping decks, Odium and Draconis, they're not too far off from one another. I would recommend picking up Odium if you are really being economical. But, not everyone builds for economic efficiency. Some people like the deck because the deck is cool. Some people already plan to build this deck and now it's made a lot cheaper. It really is a lot cheaper than it used to be. It just isn't very cheap to begin with. But if you are one of those people and you still want to build Liael Draconis, you watched the anime, you loved Erika, you want this deck no matter what, this is how I would upgrade the deck. And these are the cards that I would point you to. First of all, buy Liael Draconis. You have to do this. It has an extra drive. You get more versatility from her because she can bind units and call a different named one than what you just bound, so you have a bit more flexibility. You can ride from the soul in case you enter like a really weird scenario, like can use the divine skill from the soul. Just a lot goes well for Liael Draconis, and you can even divine skill early with her. I think you could do that with Amorta too, but in particular for her, because you have +1 drive, she's a lot more lethal, so she's a bit closer to Odium in terms of lethality. For your draw engine, you can get Surgowns and you can get Dissection Angels, two very, very powerful cards. You may be tempted to get both. Honestly, not both are needed. They are very strong early game, and you basically can't have Liael without them because you really want to be able to draw cards in this deck to find your pieces, because you need an extra Draconis. You need discard fodder for when you use Draconis' skill, so you want to draw into that as well. You want to draw into shield cards early game. You just need to put the pressure on early as well so that your divine skill turn is actually threatening. For me, when I was playing this deck, I was on 4 Surgown and had 0 Dissection Angel, and I found that fine. Honestly, I'm going to show you a list later that won't use Dissection Angel either, so don't be put off by just Dissection Angel's price. Surgown is a lot more affordable, relatively speaking, and I would recommend him over her, just to be economical, and also because I just think she's a good card. He's a good card anyways. The countercharge of Dissection Angel kind of comes up here and there, but there are other ways to countercharge in Liael. For example, the Gargown that's in the deck set. This new PR, Kikil, is an early game unit that you can play on 2. It draws 1, it's an actual unit on board, it's expensive. It's super expensive, it's hard to find right now in JP format. You have to, really grind locals to find her, you have to buy them for $30 a piece at the lowest rarity possible. She is a good card. I really don't want to say otherwise, but she's kind of expensive and, she does upgrade the deck quite a bit. But certainly if you can't get her, don't feel too bad. You can still build the deck in a pretty reasonable way. Yeah, she's just, she's a good card, just a bit expensive. I'll show you a list as well that just won't have her. It just won't have her. It's a little bit older, so it doesn't have her, but it shows that the deck still works, right, without her. Elmoth is a great one they got in the same set as Draconis, and it's a way to charge your energy. Draconis charges requires you to Energy Blast 4, and Elmoth can kind of soothe that with EC1, and it increases your ceiling of power on your Draconis turn. Quite frankly though, she's not the most needed card in the game, but she's nice to have. She also works early, so go ahead. Finally, this Nebula Knight's Order, basically what it does is you can play it, and you can check the top 7 and call any card you want. And if it's in the drop zone, you can play it there too, just by binding it. This is great. It's a great card to discard for Draconis' skill. It can then convert to building your boards, and when you bind it, it becomes fuel for Liael Amorta's skill, which allows it to become a perfect guard. So that gives you early access to Amorta's perfect guarding. This card, you don't have it in EN right now, but I'm pretty sure when this deck set comes out, you will have it. So I would look for this. Even though some people I know don't like it in the deck, I think it's pretty necessary. I think it's very strong. And it is part of the quote-unquote Keter pile, sort of, and will help you build into other Keter decks if you want to build Keter decks. So I have listed out basically a ton of things you must buy to even get the deck to a playable state. She has no real good generics to speak of in this deck set that you can use to bolster your collection. So why even buy this product in the first place? Well, there are very good units in this deck that are made a lot cheaper with the deck set. It's just that they don't have a lot of wide application. Sequence Wizard is pretty good in Liael. Not every list runs him, but he is a way to build your boards and becomes a soul engine. Gabrielius is super necessary in Liael. It can also be played in Reziel if you want to build that. And Liael Amorta herself, even though she's an old Vanguard, this Perfect Guard skill is super useful. Basically, you can run up to 8 Perfect Guards in the deck. You're not going to do that, but you could. Most Liael lists basically run about 6 Perfect Guards in the deck, and she was a real costly card beforehand. Same with Gabrielius and Sequence Wizard. So it is a really great way to start building a Liael Draconis, but you just have to invest a lot of money into it afterwards. If you really want to play Draconis, this is an excellent starting point. I would highly recommend it. But if you're a new player, you just want one of the Liaels because they are pretty women and you just want to play a fun deck out of the box, or something that requires as little investment as possible from the sealed product, I would go with the Odium one. And once you've kind of built up your skills, you can look to building a deck like this. This is a deck that topped pretty recently. I don't remember the exact tournament, but as you can see, it's using the 5 Regalis piece I talked about, the Nebula Knight's Order. It's also on the red over trigger. Again, you need to upgrade your triggers if you want to take this deck to the next level, please do. And it's on 4 Amorta, so, money well spent, kind of, right? you gotta get the Elmoths. The Gabrielius here is on this Saragonis' draw engine, no dissection angel, right? And Gargant here, which is included in the deck set, is a great way to countercharge. And the Ace unit, which is again a board builder and a big chunky beater. So this is a deck list taken before the new PR key kill, before a card released in TCPT 11, which isn't very good, but it's technically a Liael card. In general though, you could build something like this and be very happy with Liael. It can be improved with the PR. I'm not sure how I would go about doing it, but you know, it is a way you can improve the deck. Maybe cut some Elmoths and cut the Ace unit, so that you can find the space for key kills. Other than that, this is a fine starting point to build into. I would recommend looking for this. Again, I've also tried to kind of find lists that are decently economical. This isn't the cheapest game in the world, nor is this the cheapest deck in the world, but I don't want you to spend $200 to play Dissection Angel, and then, you know, and then you lose and you blame me for your spending. I'm trying to find a deck list that is reasonably affordable. So I hope this will suit your needs, right? Now, here are some tips for playing Draconis. It's really hard for me to give tips for playing the Amorta deck set, and I assume many of you who have watched this video and are thinking about Amorta already know you're going to upgrade it to Draconis and you're not going to just stick with Liael Amorta, right? So here are a couple of the tips I have. Upgrade the deck. First and foremost, just please buy upgrades, you have to, I'm sorry. Number 2, mulligan very aggressively for your early grade 1s and your 2s. Early grade 2 in this scenario being something like Kikil, something that you don't mind playing early, like the Ace unit, that can convert to your draw early and convert to finding discard fodder. If you don't play early game and you don't pressure and you just chill for 2 turns, it is very likely that by the Divine Skill turn, you won't be able to end the game there. You need to have aggressive starts, stuff like the Knight's Order, the 5 Regalis, to build your boards quickly, so that your opponent has some pressure put on them, so that by the Divine turn, they're at like 5 damage, 4 damage, facing down 6 attacks, 4 drives, and they just have to pack it up and scoop because they're in such a bad position. But you can only get there if you play the early game, okay? If you are forced to go second, which, you know, maybe you want to go second or you've been forced to, consider using the Divine Skill going second immediately. Basically discarding like a Draconis for ride and then just using her to ride back into, so that you can have an early Divine Skill before they have the chance to recuperate a ton of resources. You're also going to need to use the Divine Skill early so that you can check multiple drives, so that if you're stuck taking damage to the point where you're gonna die, you're gonna want to regain some tempo by ripping the Divine Skill, or to just kill them before they get to the Persona right turn. Multi-drive doesn't only mean more chances to check crits, it also means more chances to check heals to gather shield, so you can keep playing the game so you can get to a position where you could reasonably win. Finally, just when you are returning cards to your deck for Liael Amorta's Perfect Guard, just be conscious what you are returning. Just make sure you always have the units you want in the bind zone to be called out, but you also want to make sure you have the units in your deck to call out, right? So just try and slowly get better at keeping track of that. Okay, that was most of my advice on how you can build these decks up from the deck set that you buy at the store, and kind of the game plans and whatnot. And hopefully some of these tips help you if you plan to pick these up. If you're a newer player or you're a seasoned player, you just want to kind of a refresher course. I hope these help you at least a little bit. Here's some of my closing remarks. In the end, just kind of pick the one you like more, or loan or play on online simulators like Cardfight Connect before you commit to making a purchase. These are not cheap products to get out of the store, even though they are sealed decks. They're like $60. They come with sleeves, they come with a box and whatnot, so it is decent value and the reprints are good value, but you don't really give a shit about secondary market value if you're gonna buy this from the store. You're buying this because, you know, it's a good entry point, it's easy, it's convenient. That being said, you know, don't willy-nilly spend your money if you don't have to. Just make sure you're making the informed decision. I'm putting this out there so you know the total cost basically is going to cost, and the effort and the price that you're going to have to pay to get these decks in a competitive shape. But if you just want a deck for fun, if you just want to pal around with your buddies who are playing Vanguard, I do recommend these decks. Just pick the one you like more. But obviously the Odium one is a little stronger. If you want to get these decks for a little cheaper, you know, if I had a promo code or something, I would give it to you. I don't though, but I'm open to getting those. Please sponsor me, Agora Hobby. If you want some cheaper advice, like, you know, advice on how you can pick these up, many people are basically going to buy this product to chase down the high rarity triggers included. Basically, if you're unfamiliar, in every deck set, they give you a chance of one of the effect triggers for that nation in a different art. Basically, you're just going to get one of the girls based on, you know, which nation you got. These can even be signed and stuff, I'm pretty sure. And if not, people still like these characters and they're going to really chase for those triggers. As such, a lot of these deck sets are going to be opened by people who don't have an interest at all in building these decks up. And even if they did, why are they buying for the store, right? What this means is that if you do not care about high-rarity triggers, if you do not care about Elementarias, if you do not care about the twin cast, but please care about that twin cast, it's so good, you can buy like unsealed deck sets for pretty cheap. When the first iteration of the Master Decksets released, I saw a ton of people selling like the actual deck for like $20, $10, Singapore dollars, without all the chase cards, unsealed, without the Regalis pieces. So if you want to play a different Regalis piece, or you just don't mind going without Elementaria or something, that could be a cheaper way in. Just ask people at your local shop, ask your friends, ask people in your card game groups online, and see if anyone is selling the decks in just the full paper format, just with what you need rather than all the cool little shiny things added on, okay? That's a decent way that you can get product into your hands. Whether or not you find it right that multiple people buy deck sets and, scout product, that's up to you to decide. But if you want to get these decks for cheap, you can use that part of the system and help those people recuperate the losses by spending like $20 and thus having almost a full Odium deck. I think that's a decent trade-off. Okay, that's it from me. None of this is kind of financial advice. Please don't take it as such. Spend responsibly. I'm just pointing you in the good direction. I will leave these slides in like a PDF editable form in like my description, hopefully, if I remember to do that. So yes, that's all from me. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section below. I will try to answer them in this video. I know I don't answer my comments super regularly, but if you have questions about what to build or whatnot, you can stick around. Maybe someone can help you, maybe I can help you, okay? Alright, let me know what you're picking up. Thank Claude B for the cool little designs in the background. Otherwise, all these slides will be blank slates and it'll be really boring to look at. And yeah, I will see you all next time. Leave in the comments what you're gonna build. Bye-bye.